Hello everyone! Today we're going to be going through gearing up your fresh level 80 character into Ascended gear. I'm going to assume you've already gotten exotic gear. It's fairly easy if you haven't. You just go on the trading post and there are entire sets of the gear in the stats you need for under 5 gold. It's a very short process. The game will be throwing exotic gear at you quite frequently and it's not that difficult. When I say efficiently, I don't mean the fastest. If you're looking for the fastest way, that's to break out your wallet, find your credit card, and then enter that code into the game. But that's not what we're doing here today. Today, we're going to be going through a efficient way of doing it. And that means not repetitively grinding content unless we absolutely need to. And that's getting achievements that you're probably going to want, or items you're probably going to want as you go along. Things you'd want to do with your account that are maybe not what you want to do right now, but are still things you're going to do. So it's not a waste of time, it's a synergistic way of doing it. I'm going to be assuming you want Berserker stats if you're a power build, or that you want Vipers or Sinister stats if you are a condition build. And I will be basing the rest of the video off that assumption. As a second caveat, I will be assuming that you have access to both the expansions and will be able to get access to either the specific Living World episodes mentioned or have access to all the Living World episodes, which I realize newer players may not have access to all of them, but they are worthwhile, they are nice big pieces of content, and it can be worth getting if you intend to stick around. So first up are Ascended Rings. Ascended Rings, the original way of getting these, they were one of the possibly the first Ascended item added to the game, was through Fractals of the Mist. So I'm standing here in Lion's Arch, and this is a portal to the Fractals of the Mist. And if you just walk up to it, you can just hit enter. The Fractals of the Mists have the ever-increasing difficulty, endless dungeon style design. But in addition to this, they also have a couple of daily achievements which unlock or which reward these chests, and each of these chests contain pristine fractal relics without any of the agony infusions or messing around with any of the higher level fractal stuff. You can get, I think, 4 of these pristine fractal relics a day, and these are a currency which can be used when you talk to this guy to buy Ascended Rings. So for 3 days of dailies, you can get your first Ascended Ring, and you can be advancing through the various fractal levels while you're doing it, which is handy. It introduces you to new content, it helps start to get your level up. So for each stat combination, there are 2 Ascended Rings. And this is important to note because Ascended Rings have the unique keyword, which means if you buy 2 of the same one, you can't equip both of them. It's a little archaic now with some of the newer content that allows you to bypass this, but these are the original ones. So say you want these stats, you will need to buy the Ouroboros loop and the Kilbrainan's phylactery, because if you try and equip 2 of the Ouroboros loops, you're going to have an item you can't use. Thankfully it doesn't soulbind, it's just an account bound item, so you can just move it to another character. So for the Berserker stats, there you're sorted fairly easily. So for the Condi stats, it's a little more complicated. You can't buy Vipers or Sinister from the Fractal vendor, so you're going to have to search elsewhere for those. For the Sinister stats, one of the places you can get them is by doing the Living World Season 2 Mastery achievements. So you can see that episode 6 of Living World Season 2, its Mastery award is Plague Signet, and this has the stat combination you're looking for. Another part of this is that upon playing through another one of the episodes in this, you unlock an item at the vendor here. And this item is the Veritas Seared Ring. And this is the second copy that you can use to gear yourself out with the Sinister stats. For the Viper stats, they are only available with stat selectable rings. I will cover the stat selectable items slightly later on, but they will be in Living World Season 3 and also available in some places in Living World Season 4. Once again, please note Ascended Rings are unique and you cannot equip two identical copies of them. That is something that has caught many people out, and it's something to very much be aware of. Okay, next up is Ascended Accessories. So your first Ascended accessory is fairly easy to get. You're going to want to go to Biora Marshes and go to the Stillwater Speaking waypoint, and then you're going to speak to the vendor Humble Stone. So Humble Stone will have Eskir's Talisman, and this can be unlocked by completing a fairly easy achievement, which is Idolatry, which just involves interacting with 35 Jormag idols, which are placed around the map. And yeah, I just haven't bothered doing this yet because I've already got Ascended accessories in other ways, but it's a fairly short achievement. For your second Ascended accessory, the options available to you depend on what you want to do. So the first one was stat selectable. The second one can also be, but if you just want Berserker stats, one relatively simple way is to just go to the guild commendations vendor if you're in a guild, and you can just purchase one here for just 12 commendations. If you're doing your weekly guild missions, it's not too hard to get, it's relatively painless, and it's only 5 gold. If you're looking for the Condi stats, slightly trickier but not too much, you want to go to the Living World Season 3 map, which is the Bitterfrost Frontier, and this little guy here has a Black Ice Earring, which is a stat selectable accessory. He wants this for Unbound Magic plus fresh Winterberries. Winterberries are the easiest of the Living World Season 3 currencies to gather up. You can get that in a couple of days, it's not too much. He's located up here in the center of the map, aboard the Kodan ship, which you just have to get the staircase up, and it's easy enough to get to. So next up is Ascended Amulets, and this can be a very simple process depending what stats you're looking for. If you just want a normal Ascended Berserker Amulet, you just want to pop into World vs. World, speak to the Laurel Merchant, and bam, right away, you've got a selection of amulets right here. The reason I'm suggesting World vs. World is it's 10 laurels cheaper, and in your first few achievement chests, you usually get enough badges of honor to do this, and at this stage you probably won't need those badges of honor for anything else. You generally get them in abundance compared to their usage. If you're looking for the Condi stat amulets, you're going to have to go a little further out of your way, but still one of the easier ways to do it is to go back to Biora Marshes. Unfortunately, this time the vendor is not helpfully located directly next to a waypoint, and you're going to have to travel a bit. So if we come up and along here, we're going to head to the Aberrant Forest, I believe is the area's subname. We'll just go along. Oh, no. I always forget that when I'm riding this mount, that you lose the ability to ascend past a certain height the longer you go without touching the ground, which can be a little irritating at times. I do think this mount should have just been freeform flying at this stage. So yeah, we want to go deeper into this spooky forest, and we are trying to find a spooky looking hut, which will be located around here. The helpfully pointed out ruined hut. In this hut, you will find a Kodan who seems to be having some issues. And if you help him out with his issues by completing an achievement known as the Hunger, which takes a little bit, but not too long, and it's fairly easy to do, he will then unlock as a Karma Merchant, and he will sell Eskir's Amulet, which is a match to the rest of the set that we looked at earlier. So for back pieces, it's a little different. Back pieces, there's a lot of collections that will eventually give you ascended items. None of them are particularly easy or fast, I would say, but you're probably going to end up doing most of these at some point, and it can be just as convenient to bite down and follow through on that. If, however, you don't want to do that or only want to do one, I'd recommend doing Maudry. It's a series of achievements that will give you an ascended backpiece at the end, and also a very handy little item, Maudry 2, which will eat bloodstone dust, which is one of the items that usually ends up clogging up your inventory a bit, unless you're actively using it a lot. If you don't want to pursue that way, it's back to Bitterfrost Frontier, and to our little Quaggan friend here. He also sells the Ice Brood Horn backpack, which is stat selectable, and for both options, or for both power and condi, is your easiest option. Grinding out 400 of the berries doesn't take very long, it's not too arduous. So next up is weapons and armor. Before I get into those, it's important to note that you can stat swap weapons and armor, which means if you get an ascended item that doesn't have the stats you want, rather than having to go get an entirely new ascended item, you can just use the Mystic Forge, chuck in some items, and you can revamp it to the item you want for very little cost. All the components are tradable. It's very easy to do, and it's in fact how I usually make other stat combinations that I want for armor sets. So for weapons specifically, the best way to obtain a fair few of them is through achievements. There are achievements depending on which weapons you're looking for. So if you want a dagger, greatsword, scepter, or sword, shield or sword, yes, then you're going to want to do the Knight of the Thorn, and this is only completable after you've finished the Heart of Thorns story. I'm not going to click into it because it might have spoilers for the story, but that's where it's located under side stories, and it will award you with one ascended weapon, but you can change between those various different ascended types. The next one I would recommend is the specialization collections. Each of these specialization collections will award you ascended weapons when they're completed. I would only recommend doing the Path of Fire ones. The Heart of Thorns ones require an item that was cheap enough to make when it was initially released, but because it requires mystic coins is now actually quite expensive to make. So doing the Path of Fire ones will unlock an axe, dagger, rifle, shortbow, sword, and torch. If you're unlucky enough to not be in one of those weapon categories, or you're looking for the aquatic weapons, after these two options, the most efficient method is actually just to craft the item. The price of ascended crafting materials crashed a while back and has never recovered since, so you can make an ascended weapon for about 30 gold a pop, which is really not that much in the grand scale of things. And if you're looking for one of the more unusual stat inscriptions, you can buy that on the trading post, chuck them into the Mystic Forge, and then make the one you want. So on to crafting ascended armor. This is the least exciting one, as the only reliable method is really just to craft the armor set. Again, as the price of ascended materials crashed, it's a relatively painless process. There are time gates for each day, but those time gates can be overridden by just buying the items off the trading post at a relatively low cost. Yeah, so crafting an armor set will require these three, which are time locked to once per day, but you can buy the finished item off the trading post when it's processed through. So the process of crafting ascended armor requires you to first reach 500 armor crafting in the preferred profession, is that tailoring, leatherworking, or armor crafting. Then you're going to want to go to one of these guys, and they have all the recipes you want. As I've said, with ascended stat swapping, it doesn't particularly matter which type you choose when you click this, because once you buy one of these, you can open it and then select which stats you want. And it only unlocks that specific stat combination, but that's not going to matter if you're going to stat swap using the Mystic Forge. So once you have the one you need, you want to go back here, and if we look at this, these are the leggings. So to craft the leggings, you're going to need vision crystals and the inscription. The time gates are on multiple of these items. The Bolt of Damask for this is the time gate, as it's craftable once per day. but again is buyable on the trading post. So the last ascended item for your complete set is the oft-forgotten Aqua-Breather. There are only 2 methods in the game at all to get one of these. The first is here in Lion's Arch with Dive Master Astora, and she sells a very expensive version, which is the Diver's Breather Helmet. And this costs quite an amount, wouldn't recommend doing this way. The second one is to go back to our Quaggan friend in Bitterfrost Frontier. He also sells the 3 armor classes of Aquabreather, without a pretty skin, but you're just there for the stats. So now your character is fully geared out. They have their full set of ascended armor, their weapons, their armor, their accessories, even their Aquabreather. You're nearly sorted out. There's just one more thing to consider, and that is the infusion slot. If you're going to be doing fractals, you're going to want your infusion slot to have agony resistance, as that's a kind of gating mechanic that was introduced and what ascended rarity was initially introduced for. But if you're not, you're going to want to pop back over to World versus World and go back to one of the merchants here. And if you talk to this Laurel merchant again, you will notice they have a range of infusions you can buy. And these are the cheapest way to fill out all your slots with power infusions or Condi infusions, while also having a secondary benefit for World versus World. It is usually very expensive to get the power plus agony resistance, unless you're getting some of the special cosmetic infusions, which as a new player are probably out of your reach for now. It can be quite pricey initially, but it's well worth it because you're essentially getting an extra 100 power for little to no effort. I hope that was informative and can help you get geared up. If you have any more questions or things you'd like to know how to do, please leave a comment below and I will do my best to answer them or make a video on them. If you've enjoyed the content, please be sure to like and subscribe, mainly the subscribing part as that helps the most, and I will see you next week for the next video.